Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Peace be upon us. Shalom, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, Salam Kebajikan. Good afternoon, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. From the heart of Indonesia, Jakarta, we welcome you to Jakarta Future Global City Preparedness. For your information, this event is proudly held by Jakarta Investment Centre as part of the Department for Investment and Integrated One-Stop Services, Jakarta Provincial Government, in collaboration with British Embassy Jakarta. I am Chika, and it is my greatest honor to be your host for today. First and foremost, let us welcome our distinguished speakers, Mr. Matthew Downing, Deputy Head of Mission, British Embassy Jakarta. Welcome, sir. Mrs. Tona Hutauruk, Head of Jakarta Investment Centre. Mr. Andika Aji, CEO of the Center for Research and Innovation, Board for Regional Development Planning, Jakarta Provincial Government. Mr. James Watkins, Head of Public Policy and Public Impact at the London Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Mr. Julian Smith, Director, PricewaterhouseCoopers Indonesia Advisory. A very welcome, sir. Mrs. Safia Moore, Cities Planning and Design Team Leader, Associate Principal at ARUK. And last but not least, Dr. Fitra Faisal, Executive Director of Next Policy, Economist, Lecturer at Universitas Indonesia. A very warm welcome to all distinguished speakers, guests, investors, and participants. We appreciate you for taking time off your schedule today. Let's give a big round of applause to us all. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to deliver a bit of background about today's event. Following the capital city relocation plan to Nusantara, Jakarta aims to strengthen its role as Indonesia's center of business and economy and secure its position as a more prominent global city. So this event is intended to inform the future development of Jakarta to become a global city and encourage more collaborations between potential global partners and Jakarta. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm very delighted to introduce a glimpse of today's agenda. To start the discussion, we will listen to an opening remarks that will be followed by a panel session. And please stay until the end of the event, as I'm sure we will have a lot of questions on this exciting discussion. You can freely drop your questions at any time at the chat box, and the speakers will sum it up at the edge of the event. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let us hear an opening remarks that will be delivered by the head of Jakarta Investment Centre, Mrs. Tona Hutauruk. Mrs. Tona, please, the time is yours.
Thank you for the introduction, Chika. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Peace be upon us. Good afternoon. The Honorable Mr. Matthew Downing, the Deputy Head of Mission, British Embassy Jakarta. Nice to meet you, sir. And then the Honorable Speakers and Moderators, our distinguished guests and participants. Allow me to introduce myself again. My name is Tona Hutauruk. I'm the head of Jakarta Investment Centre, a unit under the Department of Investment and Integrated One-Stop Service from the Jakarta Provincial Government. So on behalf of the Jakarta Provincial Government, firstly, I would like to convey my gratitude to all participants who spare their time to attend this collaborative webinar with our strategic partner, British Embassy Jakarta. I'm very happy that we are able to collaborate once again with the British Embassy Jakarta, which has continued to support us and become our most reliable partners in the development of Jakarta. So by using this momentum, allow me to again convey my deepest appreciation to the British Embassy Jakarta. Today's event is also held as a series of roads to our annual event, the Jakarta Investment Forum 2023, which will be started next week on July 11th. And continue until the peak on the 3rd of August for the JIF plenary. So please, ladies and gentlemen, mark your agenda. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, global cities play an increasingly important role at the global and regional level. Large urban centers have significant competitive advantages and serve as primary nodes in the ever more interconnected global economic system. And one of the major indexes that evaluate and measure global city ranking annually is the Global Power City Index, GPCI, issued by the Mori Memorial Foundation. According to its report in 2022, Jakarta is currently ranked 45th out of 48 cities globally. With this position, we are determined to boost our position as a more prominent global city by boosting infrastructure and transportation system across the city. Therefore, this webinar took Jakarta Future Global City Preparedness as a part of Jakarta's effort to inform our future development to be a more prominent global city. Ladies and gentlemen, along with the Capital City Movement Plan, the Jakarta provincial government is currently envisioning and also working to strengthen our position nationally and globally. It is stated in the Jakarta Special Region Government Bill 2023 that the Special Region of Jakarta acts as a trade, financial service, monetary investment license service, and national business activity center on regional and global scale. That is one optimistic vision, and we realize that every major policy shift and development transition will benefit investment opportunities. So now it is really the perfect time for the government of Jakarta to lead and initiate a development-driven investment policy. I'm very happy to share that in the first quarter of this year, 2023, Jakarta's investment realization reached a remarkable achievement with a total of 36 trillion rupiahs and exceeded the target of 25 trillion rupiahs. Also last year, I'm very happy to inform that we were successful in reaching the total investment of 143 trillion rupiahs, exceeded target of 124 trillion. So that's quite good figures actually for Jakarta. But however, based on our calculation, by 2023, there will be still quite a big gap for us in the government of DKI Jakarta. It's about more than 500 trillion rupiahs, or equivalent to 32 billion USD, for providing infrastructures, digital system, and facilities in Jakarta. So knowing this gap, there is a really urgent need for collaborative action from government, private sectors, also other stakeholders, including global partners, to realize infrastructure development. Ladies and gentlemen, our country has been preserving economic bilateral cooperation with the United Kingdom for almost 70 years. Thank you for that, Bapak Downing. And London especially has become our strategic city partner that always inspired us to grow as the next prominent global city onwards. As we all know, London was awarded the first rank of Global Power City Index for its productivity, connectivity, as well as for their strong commitment and accelerating more of climate action in the region. So, I mean, it's a very tough job actually, keep the balance between all the development and, the advanced infrastructure and all, but still maintaining the actions of preserving the climate action. We also acknowledge that London is a promising business destination that connects the Europe region with the world. Almost 33% of European headquarters of Global Fortune 500, 40% of world's foreign equities, etc., which are very remarkable figures. So this has inspired us to learn directly from the expertise that are now sitting with us, such as Ibu Safia Moore from ARUP, and then London Chamber of Commerce and Industry, also the PricewaterhouseCoopers Indonesia, Bapak Julian Smith, also to my fellow DKI Jakarta, Bapak Andika Aji from the Board for Regional Development Planning, or Bapeda, he is the very guy that you want to meet. Should you need more information about short, middle, and long-term development policies and strategies of DKI Jakarta. So by using this great opportunity, I would like again to inform you that let's utilize this moment to exchange information, not only about the best practice, but also to gain more insights that we can do to support the future of Jakarta as the global city. So last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to inform that we in the Jakarta Investment Center, again, very happy and show my gratitude for all the participants coming here. And again, mark the agenda on the 3rd August for the Jakarta Investment Forum 2023. Have a very fruitful and yet fun webinar this afternoon, and thank you for the time. I give it back to you, Chika. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you, Mrs. Tona, for your wonderful opening remarks. For the following program, we will also have welcoming remarks from Mr. Matthew Downing, the Deputy Head of Mission of British Embassy Jakarta. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Matthew Downing.
Great, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. Ibu Tona, Head of Jakarta Investment Centre, Mr. James Watkins from the London Chamber of Commerce and Industry, who's joining us from London, Mr. Julian Smith, the Country Director for PwC Indonesia, Mrs. Sophia Moore, the Senior Planner at Arup, Bapak Anji from the Board of Regional Development Planning Jakarta, Dr. Fitrul Faisal, the Executive Director of Next Policy. Ladies and gentlemen, everyone that's here, selamat siang semuanya. As well as already been said, I'm the Deputy Head of Missions, so the Deputy Ambassador for the British Embassy here in Jakarta, and we cover Indonesia and also Timor-Leste. I wanted to start by saying thank you. Thank you for inviting me to give these opening remarks, where we're going to be discussing about Jakarta Future Global City Preparedness. Because as a current resident of Jakarta and a former resident of London, it's great to have this opportunity to talk about the different cities and the different experience that we've had. Thank you also to Jakarta Investment Centre for hosting the Jakarta Investment Forum 2023 next week. And I'm delighted that the UK will be participating in this very important event in our annual calendar. And then thank you to everyone else that's here, our panelists, moderator, our esteemed audience, all of those that helped to organise today's webinar. It's really great to have you all together to discuss this important topic. So Indonesia, as the world's 16th largest economy, with the 4th largest population, is a really important partner for the UK across all areas of the economy. And our links and areas of cooperation are going from strength to strength. So from government to government, business to business, people to people, and of course, city to city. We congratulate Indonesia on a very successful chairmanship of G20 last year. And with the UK's new status as dialogue partner for ASEAN, we're delighted to support Indonesia's ASEAN chairmanship this year, under the theme of ASEAN Matters, Epicentrum of Growth. We're committed to supporting Indonesia across its agenda this year, including its ambition to accelerate the region's economy, strengthen resilience in the region in addressing global challenges. We're committed to supporting Jakarta too. So I'm proud that the UK has already been part of Jakarta's journey. We've been supporting projects that focus on developing urban transport, increasing climate resilience, fostering change and reform towards achieving net zero. Jakarta, as you all know probably better than me, is a massive metropolitan area, home to over 10 million people. And I've been living here about a year. I found it an incredible city, full of energy, full of vibrancy, full of traffic sometimes. It continues to strengthen its economy, and it plays a vital role as the largest contributor to the nation's GDP. And this year, I have it's celebrating its 496th anniversary. So many congratulations to everyone in Jakarta, and Dirgahayu Kota Jakarta. Now, Indonesia is continuing with its long-term plan of moving the capital from Jakarta to Nusantara. And that capital relocation will mark the end of Jakarta's special status. But it's going to remain as Indonesia's commercial and financial centre. So it's great that today we have colleagues from Arup, which is a company I've worked closely with in the past, who can share their experience of delivering the work in the new capital and also provide an overview for Jakarta in the future and what it might mean. As mentioned by Ibu Tona, London is considered one of the world's major cities as well, which combines advanced infrastructure, connectivity, access to finance, very vibrant social life, and an incredible richness of diversity. As was already mentioned, it's home to many international headquarters and also centres of knowledge excellence. So it's great that we have colleagues from the London Chamber of Commerce and Industry who can share some of their experience about how they've been able to support London achieve its prominent role, what lessons Jakarta might be able to learn from us. But equally, there's so much that we on the UK side need to learn from Indonesia in general and from Jakarta specifically. You've got some really important experience that we need to hear from as well. So I look forward to hearing from Bapeda as well about Jakarta's experience. And then Jakarta not only serves as a vital economic engine for Indonesia, but also for Southeast Asia and increasingly for the rest of the world as well. So I really look forward to hearing from our colleagues from PwC, who can talk about the opportunities for Jakarta as a commercial capital of Indonesia, and also about collaboration with private sector in terms of securing investment for project development. That's a sort of a small range of some of the companies that the UK has. But of course, we've got lots of other companies, lots of other expertise, and we really want to help and work with Indonesia. We can help on strategic advice, planning, design, engineering, project delivery, asset management, operations, capacity building. We have experience in a wide range of areas as well: sustainable infrastructure, transport, energy and renewable energy, healthcare, digital, education, financial sector, all of which are needed and I hope would help as the city looks to grow and develop. And we have access to finance as well. So UK Export Finance is able to provide attractive finance options and it has availability of £4 billion for projects in Indonesia. So there's a lot we have to offer. There's lots that we can discuss today. I very much look forward to hearing from the amazing panel that's been brought together today and then the questions that will follow. I wish you all a very fruitful and successful webinar today and very fruitful cooperation in the future. Terima kasih.
Thank you, Mr. Downing, for the great welcoming remarks. We can't wait to learn more on how London maintained its position as a world-class global city through the upcoming panel session. Jumping on to the next agenda, we will have a panel session about Jakarta's future development to become a global city and hear an insight from expert on city development plan, followed by the long-awaited Q&A session. This session will be conducted by Dr. Fitra Faisal, Executive Director of Next Policy, economist, lecturer at Universitas Indonesia. Recognized as one of the most prominent economists in Indonesia, Dr. Fitra Faisal was appointed as the official spokesperson for the Minister of Trade of the Republic of Indonesia in 2020. He is widely featured in the regional and global news media coverage as a talented economic pundit. He is also appointed as the Commissioner of Infra Digital in Nusantara in 2018 and the Executive Director of Next Policy, who is actively giving advice on the nation's economic issues. Dr. Fitra, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jika, for your warm welcome and very good afternoon for all of us. So before I introduce to you the elite speakers that we have today, let me deliver you some of the prologue that is actually very relevant for today's discussion. So economists is just like, a psychic. We're trying always to to see the future, right? So yeah, in here in Indonesian term we call it dukun. So economist and dukun is just like a very similar profession actually. But what differentiates economists and dukun, that economists, both of us are actually seeing to the data. Yeah, dukun is using kemenyan, some kind of herbs that they actually use the herbs to provide some mystical value, mystical prognosis. But alas, data is also a mystical form that if you see the data, you can have 1,000 of perspectives. Is also mystical actually. But again, I want to share some of the data that I gathered for the past week. So if we refer the data from the World Urbanization Prospect, currently 50% of the world's population is projected and to reside in urban areas. And in 2050, the proportion will reach at least 70%. In particular, 90% of the city's largest population growth comes from Asian and also African nations. So at present, we have 70% of the world's GDP come from cities, and the number continued to rise by 90% in 2050. Therefore, I remember one of my first encounter in the area of development economics just 20 years ago in my undergraduate studies. I remember that there was a hypothesis or a prognosis, a paradigm, a Lewis dual sector paradigm between rural and urban areas. Urban areas always create magnet for the rural areas. So this will attract all kind of, labor, and then all kind of factor of production coming from the rural to the urban areas. That is actually very much what we will see in the future, and is progressing even more. Therefore, a wise urban management will help shape the future of the world. How will this draw the picture of future Indonesia? This is the topic that we will actually discuss today. To give you a big picture of the mega trends of the future, that we will actually face, I can quote Andres Lindgren, 8 mighty megatrends. He highlights some of the biggest challenges for cities in the future. These challenges include population boom, rapid urbanization, as the Lewis dual sector model suggests, the ferocious consumption, technological rush, digital transformation, and an enlarged global connectedness, environmental degradation, and also increasing wealth inequality. That is very much what we are also facing today, but is getting worse in the future. So, having that in mind, our objective today, 3 objectives. First is to understand the future development and supporting policies planned by the Jakarta government to become a global city. The second is to understand expert experience, the panel of experts, relating to city development projects, including structuring finance and securing investment. And the third one, to learn the best practice from London as a global city, including tools, resources, organizations, and regulatory frameworks to support the global ambitions. Therefore, we have the panelists. The first panelist, Safia Moore, Cities Planning and Design Team Leader from the Associate Principal at Arup. And second, we have Andika Aji, CEO of the Center of Research and Innovation Board for Regional Development and Planning, Bapeda DKI Jakarta. And we have also James Watkins, Head of Policy and Public Impact at the London Chamber of Commerce. Okay, speaking of London, is a near miss last EPL, right? Arsenal, and then we have Manchester. So a difficult task to win the EPL for the Londoners. And then the fourth one, we have Mr. Julian Spit, the director of the PricewaterhouseCoopers Indonesia Advisory. Okay, so without further ado, I will give the first presentation and discussion to Bu Safia Moore. You have 15 minutes, please. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Fitra, for the introduction, and thank you for the opportunity for the Jakarta Investment Centre and the British Embassy Jakarta to be part of the conversation today. I think both Indonesia's new capital city, Nusantara, and the opportunity for reimagining Jakarta makes Indonesia one of the most interesting places to be as an urban planner. So I'm really happy to be based here in Jakarta and having this conversation today. So today I'll share some thoughts on these 2 projects based on my experiences at Arup. And maybe a short introduction about Arup. We're a global independent firm of designers, planners, engineers, and technical specialists working across every part of the built environment. We are across 30 countries and across 10 offices here in Southeast Asia. And in Indonesia and Jakarta, we focus on cities and development with the master planning of the Indonesian new capital city, as well as some low carbon development planning together with the UK government here in Semarang and Makassar. Across the infrastructure space, we work on MRT Jakarta and other transport infrastructure. And across the property area, we work on very tall, interesting buildings, such as the Astra Tower, and working across data centers. And we think that sustainable development is everything. We recognize that, maybe I'll share my screen here. We recognize our impact across the built environment has a lasting impact. And we have the responsibility to embed sustainable development in everything we do and to be able to shape a better world. And that was really the appeal for us to be involved in the Indonesian New Capital City Master Plan. It was an opportunity for a global and a local showcase of sustainable development, something really exciting to think about how you could explore what sustainable development in cities could be, an opportunity to test new things, a new way of doing things, and also think about the opportunity to continually learn from the way that we're designing this new city, and platforms like this, an opportunity to learn and share, and an opportunity for Indonesia to share to other places like the UK and London and vice versa. So similar, I think, to Dr. Fitra, we thought about Nusantara's development within the global context of local and global drivers of change. And again, this is not dukun, it's about thinking about megatrends that are being experienced in cities and have evidence that these may come out in the future. And this context is really important to help us prepare for the future cities like Nusantara, and with an opportunity to reflect on the opportunity for equitable economic development, which was a key driver for thinking about Nusantara, an opportunity to think about biodiversity loss, which is again both a global challenge but very relevant to Kalimantan and the natural ecological assets of the area. Considerations of digital disruption that of course bring innovation and change across all parts of the built environment. No city development now could not think about climate change, so an opportunity to think about both the threats to community and places, but also the momentum around innovation and opportunity to invest in climate positive solutions. And of course, some of the changing expectations around work and life balance that have been impacting from some elements around digital disruption, but also the way that we have experienced cities and places with disruptions like COVID. So Nusantara and the master plan for Nusantara was really an opportunity to proactively address these opportunities and challenges. And I'll talk through these kind of three key elements of the master plan to provide a little bit of context of how the city is trying to do that. First, through a really strong overarching sustainability framework. Second, through thinking about different scales of the cities and different components of the built environment and how they interact with each other. And then thirdly, embracing the city as dynamic and something that will have iterative development. So firstly, the overarching sustainability framework was established from the conception of the master plan, some early visioning work with multiple government stakeholders, helped to establish both the vision for a world-class city for all, a sustainable, resilient and smart forest city. And it was an opportunity to also define the next layer of what that vision for the city could look like. There was a definition of these 8 outcomes and 24 KPIs. And this sustainability framework is, I think, really innovative in city development. It's been used as both a kind of common reference point for everyone in government in terms of the way they talk about the city, but also a reference for, I think, as Ibu Tona reference collaborative action. So we can refer to these overarching 8 outcomes and these 24 KPIs to have conversations about how people come into the city, interact, and it's clear and transparent in terms of the expectation and the ambition of what the city is trying to deliver. And we've seen these framework being used really widely from both that conversation about what the city is has the ambitions for, down to some of the detailed design work. So for example, some review of a detailed spatial plan or a review of the letters of interest that have come through. So this is a kind of key component of the city that has helped shape the city around the broader vision for a sustainable development. I think the second key feature of the Indonesian new capital city is being able to think about the city as an ecosystem. The city has been thought from an outcome-led approach, and from being able to think about the city as in the outset around being able to integrate and think about cross-cutting themes of people, place, and planet has enabled the development of integrated strategies. So there's greater efficiencies across the infrastructure and the development and spatial plans. So we've seen this through the development plans being designed with nature. There's elements of respect where there are very ambitious targets around green cover. Green cover has also been used as a way to contain development, to support compact development without sprawl. And nature has also been used as green corridors to support connection both with nature and with people. We've seen this approach around cities as systems also into the very detailed experience element of the city. So the city is established as an inclusive and walkable city with walking distance to public transport, transit-oriented hubs, and green open spaces as well as amenity. And this has been a really important foundation of the city that we've looked at a very detailed level to ensure that these 10-minute cities are established and then can be built up and connected to this broader city across 56,000 hectares. The third element of the city as an ecosystem enabled the development of a comprehensive infrastructure plan. And you can see how some of the KPIs from the framework have been embedded into the strategies that are now highlighted through some of the regulations. So there are targets around low carbon energy across the delivery of data centers and supporting 100% digital connectivity across the whole city. Around integrated waste management systems with targets towards 60% recycling. There are strategies around water to support clean water access for all, as well as wastewater strategies that are able to be connected and thought about as one whole ecosystem. I think the last key component of the development of the master plan is that we recognize that this is not a static plan. It requires both some of the fixed elements of the ambition and the vision and the KPIs, but also the flexibility to evolve with the community, thinking about who's there now, and then who will call Nusantara home. And this is a really important opportunity to think about what lovability might mean for the city. I think Pak Bambang, the chair of the Nusantara Authority, talks a lot about Nusantara as a lovable city, and we're working on opportunities to identify investments around lovability now that could enable the city to start to build that attachment and enable that evolution of the identity as it grows from now to the future. So I'll switch then to a little bit of reflections on the opportunity for Jakarta. I think the Jakarta's shifting status is not just an opportunity to think about buildings or assets or infrastructure alone, but an opportunity to think about the transformation of the city. And I think when we talk about transformation, it's about maximizing benefits. So this is when 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2. It enables the opportunity to think about concurrently addressing challenges and to ask really big questions and formulate solutions to really maximize benefits. So I think I'll end with a couple of these big questions that we could ask of the city of Jakarta. So firstly, what is the city for? We could rethink Jakarta's economic position in Indonesia, in Southeast Asia, and globally, as I think many of the speakers have shared before me. We can also ask a question about who the city is for, and there's opportunities to rethink how Jakarta could embed social inclusion across the built environment, embedding places for women, for children, and for older people. We could also ask questions about how do we want to transform the city, thinking about different participatory methods around how we design and develop the city, as well as how we embed climate change considerations across the built environment. And then I think also a really interesting question about where do we develop in the city and how we might consider climate change in the urban footprint and how we shift or prioritize or focus development in the city. So I think I'll leave the questions there as an opportunity to further discuss and enjoy the conversation going forward. Thank you, Dr. Fitra.
Thank you, Bu Safia. So I like the term of iterative plan because Jakarta and the new cities, the new future capital, we still have a very huge task in terms of consolidating the variation of the perspectives. Because just yesterday, I was invited to the executive office of the president, the Kantor Staff President, and we deliver some of the geopolitical and geoeconomic consideration. But one of the most interesting part was when one of the speaker, hardliners, environmentalists, she said that IKN is not environmental friendly. So and he then classified IKN or the parties that actually affirm the IKN as parties that is actually not environmentally aware. So there is actually very, it is not mind-blowing. So we have that perspective, although the IKN itself is to actually create the sustainability in Indonesian future cities. So in that part, I think we need some kind of the iteration between those perspectives and the plan of becoming future Jakarta, how it is actually connected with the future capital. Okay, but I will leave that for discussion later. Next one, I will invite the next speaker. Hold on. Here we have Pak Andika from Bapeda DKI Jakarta. Okay, the floor is yours, Pak Andika.
Thank you, Fitra. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Wait, I will share some. Okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, participant of Jakarta Future Global City Preparedness event. First of all, I would like to convey an apology from the chairman of the Bapeda that she couldn't attend this event because she had another agenda with the city council representative office, so to discuss about special planning for Jakarta for another midterm planning years. So, ladies and gentlemen, as per our agenda discussion today, I will deliver the presentation of the chairman of the Bapeda office. So, okay, maybe all of you are wondering where is the direction of the Jakarta city development in the future after the relocation of national capital to Nusantara or BKN. So, according to our president, he stated that Jakarta needs to be determined as an economic center which has international district. That's the commitment from national government to Jakarta, that Jakarta will stay as one of the economic center of Indonesia, and then in the future will become a global city as our goals. As you know, that Jakarta is the biggest economic center in Indonesia. It's a home for the about 4.7 million inhabitants. That's 3.9% of Indonesia population. But the contribution to the national GDP is more than 15%. According to the Statistic Office, Jakarta contribute 16.6% of Indonesia GDP. So that's why national government also realized that Jakarta need to be one of the economic center in Jakarta, even though the capital city will be relocated to the new places called Nusantara. As mentioned before, that Jakarta has 45 rank around the globe as a city, according to the Mori Memorial Foundation report in 2022 or last year. This institution released the Global Poverty Index, so that Jakarta, as you see in this presentation, ranked as number 45. So we realized that so many challenges that we have to face, like economic aspect, research and development aspect, cultural interaction, livability, environment, and accessibility. That's our challenges need to be done in many years from now. So we can compete with other cities around the world, and then to fulfill our goals as a global city, one of global city in Southeast Asia region, and also one of the economic center of Indonesia. So in terms of the infrastructure characteristic of the global city, we realized that Jakarta has so many challenges. Right. So, for example, in the public transportation sector, many global cities around the world has underground rapid transit system, but in Jakarta we still building it. So the underground rapid transit system is on progress right now. So the status of the public transportation need to accelerate. For the network also, we has most of all Jakartans people and then inhabitants around Jakarta most likely has a car-oriented mindset, and then we also has a car-oriented street that's should be shifted to multimodal street. So in terms of harbor, the output of the harbor also need to escalate, so we can compete with other global cities. Airport also, we already achieved this one. We have already more than 3 runway and it's already achieved. For waste, we still have need more attention about it. So we only have one dumping system. We still develop the waste to energy process, which is represent waste to energy and recycling for other global city. In terms of sanitation, also we still have some area coverage covers the sewerage system in Jakarta, especially in central Jakarta district, and plan to be completed by 2050. And also in drain system, also we have need more attention to developing it. For water supply, we realized that only 36 water demand fulfilled by the pipe water supply. Comparatively with the other global city, more than 90% supplied by pipe water. Also the water itself is not safe to be consumed. For the electricity also, it just only 100% electricity demand fulfilled, but the gas distribution pipeline is not. It just going to be executed, and also the channel to underground network is yet to be done. In terms of telecommunication and information, also like that. One more thing is about innovation and technology. Unfortunately, that the budget for the research and development in Jakarta, especially, is not like other global city. Research and development budget is need more attention because it's low. And also in health, we have insurance, but not yet optimal. Number of health facilities isn't yet sufficient and affordable. According to data, that only 39% also people population pursue the university degree. So comparatively to other global city, which has more than 50% population pursue the university degree. For the housing also, there's so many homeworks need to be done by Jakarta city government also. How we create that Jakarta to become a global city. So we have to make Jakarta as a livable city to fulfill the indicator of the global city index, which is we have to make Jakarta more livable for Jakarta inhabitants. So one of the strategy and in our perspective is to have a special plan as one of the instrument towards Jakarta as a global city. So based on our Jakarta special plan, we have a vision Jakarta as a transit and a digital-based resilient city. So we have 6 goals. One is transit-oriented and digital city development, and creating self-sufficient neighborhood, creating a resilient and integrated urban space with surrounding area, urban space that supports Jakarta as global business. Number 5 is sustainable and developable of coastal area. And another one is urban space that supports Jakarta as a center of government and culture. That's 6 goals that we have to fulfill in the Jakarta Spatial Plan. For the transportation plan development, we have problems that traffic and high cost economy that makes inefficient movement. Also, we have the policy to shifting the car-oriented and highway-oriented policy to transit-based urban development. That's our transportation development plan. We make Jakarta in 17 city service center, and then 14 sub-city service center, and then 20 neighborhood service center. So that's connecting the nodes that creates the transit-based urban development in Jakarta. For the digital infrastructure plan development, the main problems is inefficient activity pattern and people mobility, root cause inequality of digital access, unintegrated data, information, etc. And then our policies our implementation gap is telecom efficient infrastructure development, still partially and not integrated as service on residential and future technology. So we shifting the paradigm to digital infrastructure to support pattern of activity shifting people mobility. So we have to develop the advanced and affordable network and digital infrastructure, optimize communication and digital technology utilization, and drive digital-based and anticipatory space utilization flexibility, and develop digital hub. That's our strategy to digital infrastructure plan development. For the housing plan development, as you know, there's a backlog in Jakarta also. We make the shifting paradigm to the provision of decent and affordable vertical housing integrated with transportation and public facilities. That's integrate with the previous transportation plan of Jakarta that make the housing and close to the public transportation system in Jakarta. So we have to create livable and equitable residential areas as well as self-sufficient neighborhood. So as you all know that Jakarta now is like a little bit sprawl. The development of Jakarta just sprawled from east to west, from north to south. So we need to make the area of our next future development is like a compacted area, like mentioned before, that like 10 minutes or just 20 minutes distant of the city center, like
Sorry.
that.
Masih yang baik sekali.
So for environmental development plan, we have to make the green index restriction on the groundwater extraction. As you know that sea level rise and then groundwater extraction make Jakarta sinking every year. So we have to prevent that that event. So we have the restriction on the groundwater extraction and then provision of the clean water, because if we have a restriction without the provision of the water, is kind of impossible. So we have to develop both of at the same time, parallel.
Pak Haji, sorry, you have 3
Yeah.
more.
Okay. Yeah.
You have 3 more minutes.
Okay.
Wrap up.
Okay. That's right. We have also the basic infrastructure plan for the development, like policy of upgrading and implementation acceleration for waste, for drinking, for transportation, for green space, public space, and also many other public space. And also the after the relocation, we have many assets, central government asset to be managed, and hopefully we can manage it to for the Jakarta city purpose. That's on for the TOD, for the mixed use area, also for the green space area and multifunction and urban tourism development, and many other the function of the utilization of central government asset for Jakarta. And for the in terms of economic and investment, we make the international district, as the Pak President mentioned about it, that we have international district function to be a business and economic center, diplomatic center, meeting and exhibition center, and international residential center. And like I mentioned before, the challenges is like this, that we have land subsidence because of water, the groundwater extraction, and also sea level rise due to the climate changes. And our mitigation is make a compact area for the residential area and acceleration of expansion service of drinking water and pipeline works, and also restriction for the groundwater extraction policy and utilization of alternative water resources, and making the coastal embankment for the prevention for sea level rise. And for the green Jakarta, as you can feel that Jakarta has become hotter and hotter this day, so we make more urban green space area to make Jakarta more comfortable to live. Like this, this one is the scenario of the increasing the green space in Jakarta. That's it. Thank you. That's all. And like I mentioned before, that we are proposing the spatial plan for our new regulation to House of Representatives of Jakarta. So hopefully we have a long discussion, and then also we are open to have opinion and also suggestion to make our city Jakarta more livable in the future to come. I think that's all. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak Aji. Yes, Jakarta is getting hotter. That's why we need malls, many malls with air conditioners. Just joking.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, just a quick highlight from Pak Aji's presentation. So we have Jakarta to become the next global city, but now it's just in the 45th in the global power city rankings. So it's actually very huge work to do. Yeah, that's why we need to learn from the best. Yeah, so according to the global power city ranking, London is in 2022 currently is actually the first in that ranking. So what can we learn from London? Okay, so Pak James, are you here?
Thank you. Yes, I'm
Okay,
here. Thank
what are you? Arsenal, Chelsea, or Tottenham?
Can I be honest with you? I'm Tottenham, and we've had a very bad season.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
when you spoke about your remarks, I was very upset. Not really. But yeah, it's been a tough time.
But as Tottenham fans, still you're actually quite happy, right? That Arsenal is not there. Okay,
Well,
so
many are.
please, Pak James.
Well, Dr. Fitcher, thank you so much for that kind introduction, and I also want to thank the Jakarta Investment Centre and also the British Embassy in Jakarta for this great invitation. First of all, I want to say how the London Chamber of Commerce is the British capital's largest business representative organisation, and one of our key areas of work is to ensure that the international positioning of London works for cities across the world. And in that context, I wanted to highlight really two issues to all colleagues today. Number one, as I am speaking from London, I'm going to talk about what we've just heard in terms of the challenges for Jakarta and what are the key issues here in London, which means that London is doing well as a global city, but what more does it need to do so it cannot be complacent? They can remain a global city. And I will also speak about how our work means what we can do in terms of working closely with Jakarta and with Indonesia as a whole in terms of the development of global cities. And the last thing I would like to talk about to Dr. Fitra and to all colleagues is the issue of Islamic finance, because Islamic finance is a key strength of the Jakarta economy. It's a key strength of the Southeast Asian economy, and with London also having a key role in Islamic finance, this is a very, very practical opportunity to strengthen Jakarta's economic strength in the here and now, not just looking to the future, but looking to the next 6 to 8 to 18 months. So let me begin, first of all, if I may, to all colleagues, by talking first about London. So, as you've heard earlier, London has many, many football clubs, but we don't just have football clubs, we also have a huge arts and cultural scene. And yes, it's important to address very basic issues such as sanitation that we've heard earlier. That's clearly the fundamentals of having a global city. But actually, we believe here in London is actually the art scene and the diversity of that art scene, which is absolutely fundamental to our economic strength. Over 40 billion pounds, sorry, oh, that's a correction, over 40 billion pounds is contributed to the UK economy via the art scene just in London alone. So this is an incredible figure.
So in percentage, what is actually the 14 billion is?
Yeah, that's a great question.
33%, 20%.
No. So the overall figure for the UK is 90 billion. And so for London, it's 40 billion. So absolutely. So great question. Thank you. So therefore, it's hard to underestimate how important the arts are. Now, I know many of you watching this webinar today will say, well, the arts is more than about money. It's also about our cultural expression, our understanding of who we are as a community, as understanding our culture and understanding ourselves as individuals. But frankly, it's also about money and investments and foreign direct investment as well. So we do believe that all major global cities needs to have a strong arts and cultural scene. And I know here in London, we'd be happy to work with colleagues across Indonesia with the new capital city and also with Jakarta to see how we can help with that cross-pollination of cultural ideas between our two great countries. The other issue I think we should talk about is in terms, which was we heard in the last two presentations, is in terms of transport. Clearly, London does have actually, despite the complaints of many Londoners, we do actually have a very good transport system. It's not perfect everywhere, so in some parts of the capital, such as in southeast London, there are serious problems in terms of transport access, but overall it is very effective indeed. And that has not been developed by chance. It's basically a legacy, frankly, of the Victorian era in the 19th century, where through terrible working conditions, the London Underground system was developed. But of course, we need to build on that. And that's why we've had the good news, thanks to the British government's investment of what is called the Elizabeth Line, named after the Queen, who has recently passed away, linking the eastern part of England from Essex on the borders of London, all the way through to the western part of England, which is in the Berkshire area. And so that east-west line, used to be called Crossworld, or the Elizabeth Line, is a very significant step forward in that terms of interconnectivity. And we now have a mixture of transport modes, which is so fundamental in terms of buses, in terms of the underground, in terms of trams, and frankly, in terms of having a strong and robust taxi system. You know, often in these discussions, we ignore the role of taxis, but we see taxis as an integral part of the public transport infrastructure, which needs to be cherished and protected and enhanced. The other key issue that has not yet been touched on in terms of the plans for the new capital city and also for Jakarta is the issue of logistics. You cannot, in our view, have a strong capital city and a strong commercial city without a strong logistics center. And that means having facilities for just-in-time deliveries. And you can only have just-in-time deliveries if you have logistics sites which are factored into the planning of cities. Too often, including here in the United Kingdom, logistics sites are often ignored because it is not glamorous, it's not attractive, it doesn't attract any media headlines. But it's logistics sites and the role of the logistics industry that actually make sure that we have a thriving global city. But what are global cities fundamentally? Global cities are key hubs in our global ecosystem. They're key hubs in our global ecosystem for ideas to flourish, whether cultural ideas or economic ideas. And that's why I can confirm today that we are working closely, when I say we, the London Chamber of Commerce and Industry is working closely with the United States Council for International Business, or USCIB, looking at what is sometimes known as re-globalization. What that means in practice is that it is the global cities of the world, not just London, not just New York, not just Los Angeles, but also Mumbai, also Jakarta, also Kuala Lumpur, also Tokyo, and many others, who are the key centers for driving economic growth. And what we're saying with our colleagues in the United States Council for International Business, and I say this to my colleagues in the British Embassy in Jakarta as well, is that we need a global order that listens to the voices of all of you on this webinar who are actively involved in major global cities, whether they're developing global cities or they have developed. Because if we carry on with the early 20th or the mid 20th century model of global governance, where it's simply government to government relations, helpful though that clearly is with your president and my prime minister, in reality, what we really need is to hear the voices of civil society, and the voices of civil society who are driving the economies of the world are in our global cities. So that's why I would be delighted to work with the Jakarta Investment Centre and all of you on this webinar to see how we can work together with our colleagues in the United States and elsewhere in the chamber movement to see how we can have a stronger role for global cities going forward. Because one of the advantages of global cities isn't just the cultural offering, but I know this is a key issue, and I know we heard this in the last presentation, it's also the issue of finance. And many of you are watching me and watching this webinar may be thinking, what about Brexit? Well, whatever one's view is about Brexit, whether it was a good thing or a bad thing, and I'm going to be honest, Dr. Fitra, I did not vote for Brexit, but my side lost, so it does not really matter. But whether you think it was a good thing or a bad thing, the fact of the matter is that London is still, as we heard from the last presentation and from what you said, Dr. Fitra, is the #1 global city according to the rankings. We still, alongside New York, are the #1 financial center. We're still the #1 center when it comes to global fintech. We're also, in terms of those of you who like US movies, many of those US movies are actually made in London. They're not actually made in the United States. And also, if you guys are into gaming, many of those games were actually made in London. The pharmaceutical sector is unbelievably strong in London, along what is known as the Euston Road in the capital city as well. But these advantages that we have in London do not happen by accident. They do not happen just because of the entrepreneurialism of Londoners. They happen for one reason and one reason only: the openness of London to the world. And the fact is that London is a global city, but we're a global city because we are open in our diversity, as we heard from our colleague from the British Embassy. We're open in terms of welcoming different cultures from around the world. And more than welcoming cultures, we're open in learning from different cultures around the world. Because quite frankly, London is the capital of the United Kingdom. Of course it is, but it's actually in some ways very different from the rest of the UK, because it's its own ecosystem in many ways. It's the gateway to the rest of the United Kingdom, but it's also the gateway, as we heard earlier in this webinar, to the wider global economy. That frankly has not changed one iota since the Brexit vote in 2016. Some things have changed, that's true, but that hasn't. So therefore, the openness is a key issue. There are many cities around the world, including in Europe, who say they are global cities, and those European cities and others who say that try to be global cities, but then for cultural or political reasons, they may not be as open to different cultures and different ideas. And as a consequence, that actually holds back the development of those cities culturally, you could argue, but practically and financially, they definitely hold back those cities. Every indicator indicates that. Every economic indicator indicates that. So it is fundamentally important to be open, to have that open approach. But earlier, I said that London is doing well. It is doing well in terms of its transport infrastructure. We're now beginning to use the River Thames again. We have a free port, which is a kind of a tax-free centre, as it were, along the River Thames towards the county of Essex with a DP World Centre. And obviously, I know that the Indonesian government are looking at these kind of tax-free centres, or tax, should I say, centres in Indonesia that has a lower level of tax in Indonesia as well. And this is something that could also be considered. So we've spoken a little bit about transport. We've definitely spoken about culture. We've spoken about business as well. And one of the attractions of London is really based on an idea that I'm sure all of you have studied. I'm sure every one of you have actually on this webinar, which is the ideas of Michael Porter from Harvard in terms of cluster theory. And basically, for those of you who are not aware of cluster theory, what it basically argues is that people want to come together with like-minded experts or like-minded professionals to develop new ideas and new approaches, and those clusters are key to economic growth. London is the perfect example of cluster theory in action, whether it's financial services or all the other sectors that I mentioned earlier. But there's something else about London which I think has real synergies with
Can you make
Jakarta.
it in 2 minutes?
Yep, I will, forgive me. And with Indonesia, and that's the role of Islamic finance. So Islamic finance is clearly key. It's a key and growing sector in Indonesia, but it's also a very important sector in London. And what we're seeing now is the development in Dubai and in London of the sukuk market, which is growing in a very significant way. So what we believe is that we can work with the Jakarta Investment Centre and with colleagues at the British Embassy in Jakarta, and also with the Indonesian government and other colleagues in this webinar, to see how we can further strengthen those Islamic finance links between Jakarta and with London. So finally, as I'm running out of time, I just want to again thank you all very much. I think I've learned a huge amount myself on this webinar, but I also hope that this will be the start of a very promising working relationship with the London Chamber of Commerce and with my colleagues across London, with the people and businesses of Jakarta. Thank you again.
Thank you, James. So a quote from Gustavo Petro, former mayor of Bogota: "A developed country is not a place where the poor own cars, but where the rich use public transportation." So that's actually the key message of James about the transportation system. Luckily, we have the same model like in London. We have the right-hand section of the driver's seat. So at least we have that similar just between Jakarta and London. Okay, and then another interesting fact that London is becoming a creative hub, a major global and creative hub, for creating ideas and increasing productivity. So that's the one that we can learn from London. Okay, last we have let me see, from PricewaterhouseCoopers we have yeah, we have, oh yeah, I forgot. Julian Smith, yeah. I think I met you several times in several panels, but yeah, I forgot your name. So just to remind what Pak Aji mentioned earlier about planning Jakarta to become the next global cities. Okay, planning is one thing, but another that we can learn from London is investment and money is the other thing. So planning without money is just useless. So we need the partnership from the private sectors. Julian, can you enlighten us how to do that, to finance the planning activities?
Yes, happy to. Can you see my slides?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you
You have
very
13
much.
minutes. You have 13 minutes plus 2 minutes injury time.
Great. Thank you very much. So first of all, it's a pleasure and an honor to be invited to present. And I'm not going to talk about London because I think James has said everything there is to say about London. And also, it was very interesting listening to Safia because I think Nusantara is a fantastic project. But I've always thought from the beginning that the interesting challenge is what's the position of Jakarta once the capital city moves? Well, nothing really moves. There's a new capital city. Jakarta will still be there. And I do believe Jakarta will still be the financial and commercial capital. And I think sometimes people worry too much because just because a few government officials will move to Nusantara, I don't think that there's going to be a significant adverse impact on Jakarta. And in reality, perhaps it's making everybody think more about opportunities for Jakarta and that were always there, but maybe will attract more attention from now on. So because we've already heard about London, I thought I'd pick 3 other examples. And one thing that in common, Amsterdam, Sydney, and New York, they're global cities, but they're not capital cities. And they just show what the potential is for Jakarta. And if you think the commercial capital of Indonesia, which is a country much bigger than the Netherlands, with a bigger population than Australia, you know, the potential for Jakarta is potentially greater than these. So I'm going to talk a bit about the lessons from those cities, and then what happened about Jakarta, what are the opportunities? And I'm taking a sort of economics-based, sector-based approach. Which are the sectors that have the best opportunity? And then briefly, what needs to be done? I only have 13 minutes, so can't do that in too much detail. So I think one other thing, I mean, we heard a lot of good news about London, but actually all big cities have their challenges. And so we shouldn't be too gloomy about Jakarta. If we look at Amsterdam, for example, it has challenges with transport and infrastructure, rising house prices. Amsterdam is complaining it has too many tourists, whereas I think we'd like to get some more of them in Jakarta. But there are a lot of programs. What these cities have in common is they've analyzed the issues and implemented programs to remedy them. And I think that's what Jakarta is doing and still has to do. So things like in Amsterdam, encouraging electric vehicles, revitalizing downtown. I mean, since I've been in Jakarta, the Kota Tua area has been transformed to be now a place where people would actually like to go. But I think internationally, people don't even realize that actually Jakarta is an interesting place to visit. But I still think more has to be done to attract international tourists here. If we just go to Sydney, Sydney has apparently faces economics with issues with inequality, challenges with urban planning, aging population. That's a challenge we don't have in Jakarta, and it's developed specific programs trying to make itself a 30-minute city, where we're trying to make Jakarta a 20-minute city so that people can get around more quickly. Integrated planning of land use, transport and infrastructure, better links to adjacent cities, green infrastructure, health and education precincts. Again, all ideas that would be relevant to Jakarta. And then finally, New York. I think one of the challenges in New York is the skills challenge. New York's an expensive place to live, so it has trouble getting all the skills that it needs. I think London also has that challenge. Whereas in Indonesia, we have a young population, we have the people, but they don't necessarily yet have the skills that are needed. And I mentioned on this slide some other programs that have taken place in New York, things like more investment in education, investment in small businesses, improving the infrastructure, promoting healthy lifestyles. There's so many good ideas, and it's a question of choosing what is right to implement in Jakarta. If we go on to the economy of Jakarta, what I think you see from these global cities is that they get a high contribution from the service economy, London in particular. But if you look at Jakarta, the current contribution, I've picked 4 sectors which I think have the greatest potential: accommodation and food service, which is underpinning tourism; financial services, where actually a lot of the financial services activity for Indonesia takes place in Singapore, not in Indonesia; education, which is Jakarta is the education center already for Indonesia;
but actually the country needs a lot more investment in education. And then finally, healthcare. Again, Jakarta is already the center, but if you look at the private healthcare sector, people still often prefer to go internationally for their healthcare. So these are all areas where Jakarta is already strong. And I think when you're doing city economic plan, it's important to build on existing strengths. And these are the sectors where there's a big opportunity. And it is very clear that whatever happens in Nusantara, it's not going to become the financial services center for Indonesia. It's not going to be big enough to be the healthcare and education sector. I think it will have first-class facilities, but Jakarta will be still be the go-to place. So there's a lot of scope for investing in these industries, and I think the growth that these industries can offer will be much more than any growth opportunity that is lost by the transfer of public officials and some activities to Nusantara, the new capital. And I think one important thing is the fact that in the center of Jakarta, you will have some government ministries now vacated. If you link the economic planning with the urban planning, there's an opportunity to create sort of new urban center, which is an exciting place for people to visit. If you look at for those of you who are in Jakarta, if you look at the Monas area, well, it already is a place where people like to go, but it's not quite on the scale of Trafalgar Square in London, where it's a global iconic place. But there are lots of ministries around that area where the people are going to be moved to Nusantara, so there's an opportunity to redevelop those buildings into hotels, museums, whatever, and make it more of a proper city centre where people want to go. So my view is that Jakarta needs to focus on becoming a centre of excellence for healthcare, not just for Jakarta, but to drive the benefits that the whole country needs. I think it can also be become an international finance centre, but as no point in just trying to replicate what London or Singapore does. The new need is for green finance, and I think that includes Islamic finance, as James was saying as well. An enhanced centre for higher education and technical and vocational education in particular. The biggest gap in Indonesia's education sector is technical and vocational education. So we need some new institutions, and Jakarta is the right place to put them because that's where people want to come to study. And then finally, reimagining Jakarta as an international tourism destination. It already has the restaurants, the hotels, the airport, but what it doesn't have is enough things to do during the daytime. So it's not too difficult to.
Julian, what is the meaning of green fiancé?
Yeah, I'm sorry about the missing N.
Okay. So I thought that is actually a new term in
well, maybe we can find somebody a green fiancé and it can be a match for marriage as well. But I don't think that's the main purpose of what I'm trying to say. So healthcare. I just want to back up what I'm saying with the evidence. I mean, if you look at healthcare, there's already been a growth of foreign direct investment in Indonesian healthcare. But many people say that there's still too much regulation. For example, foreign doctors are not allowed to treat patients in Indonesia. And there's actually a shortage of doctors in Indonesia. So I don't think Indonesian doctors need to worry about losing their jobs if that was liberalized. But it's a good example of one thing I'll mention later, which is, I think, one of the barriers to Jakarta's filling its potential, as for the whole of Indonesia, is regulation. And regulations which are too complex and not always necessary, that tend to hold Indonesia and Jakarta back. And I think a bit more foreign investment would probably increase the trust in the quality of healthcare that is available in Jakarta.
What 1 minute response of the new healthcare regulation, Julian, about the omnibus law in health? How do you see it?
Well, I think it's moving in the right direction, but it might not be enough because one of the problems with the omnibus law is you don't have to wait for the implementing regulations. But I think that the general direction is good. But then I think there maybe needs to be some specific exemptions for Jakarta to enable it to.
I see. So I think you need to advocate this to the medical doctors because they are actually
I'm happy to engage in that debate. But
Okay, thank you.
You think I might not survive if I try that discussion, but happy to do that. Happy to show actually how it can be beneficial to people working in healthcare in Indonesia to have a bit more openness.
Sure. Thank you. Please proceed.
Financial Centre. So I think we all know. I've got a quote from the World Bank that new climate smart infrastructure alone is going to cost lower middle income countries $640 billion. So there's an enormous need for green infrastructure and investment in green jobs, investment in green SMEs, for example. There's an enormous demand, and a high amount of demand comes from Indonesia, but we do not yet have green financial institutions really fulfilling that demand. And one of the obstacles there is the same as with the financial services sector generally. Just for example, if we look at foreign exchange trading, a lot of the foreign exchange trading for Indonesia takes place in Singapore. A lot of fund management activities don't happen in Indonesia because of the regulatory and tax barriers that happen in Singapore. So if I was the governor of Jakarta to encourage more onshoring of financial services activity, because we have the banks and institutions here, they just don't do all the activities that the same banks and institutions do in other countries. Education. So this slide shows that there already is a strong domestic market for education. Consumer expenditure, private expenditure on education in Indonesia has been growing by 11% per annum. And yet there still is not the supply of all the different types of education that the country needs, particularly technical and vocational education. And a lot of students in Indonesia still think it's necessary to go overseas to study, and yet not everybody can afford that. It's been very encouraging to see some foreign universities, both from UK and other countries, thinking about partnerships and opening campuses in Indonesia. I think that needs to go much faster, because then you can have the benefit of a foreign recognized degree, but delivered in Indonesia and benefiting the Indonesian economy and becoming more accessible to Indonesians, because not everyone can afford to go and study overseas. It's something that I know the British Embassy has been really encouraging, and it's a very good opportunity for UK to develop further partnerships with Indonesia. Tourism. This is my favorite set of statistics. Just look at this red graph and you see international tourism revenue. Now, Kuala Lumpur is not a famous international tourism destination, and yet the tourism revenue in Kuala Lumpur is about 3 times Jakarta. And Malaysia is a small country.
2 minutes, Julian.
Yeah,
2 minutes.
Certainly. So that just shows the lost opportunity by not getting tourists to come to Jakarta. And it would not actually take much investment to get more international tourists to come, because they come to Bali, they even come to Jakarta, change planes and go straight to Bali. So if we can actually put Jakarta more on the map as an international tourist destination, because when most people visit a country, they want to visit the capital city. But right now, they still don't know what's there in Jakarta, and there's not quite enough to attract them. And then the blue graph, this actually shows that Indonesia is already a big market for tourism spending, but I think that a lot of that money does not happen in Jakarta. So there's a big opportunity, and also the last box, Indonesian tourists spend 2 billion a year in Singapore. Well, why not? I mean, one of the unfortunate but positive impacts of the pandemic is more people had to stay at home in Indonesia. Let's try and capture some of that and help Indonesians to understand that they can have a good time in Jakarta. They don't have to go to Singapore to have a good time. I've got nothing against Singapore, but I just think Jakarta is not fulfilling its potential here. So what needs to be done? Several people have referred to this Global City Power Index. This slide just shows some of the factors that affect the ranking, and I think it's necessary to look at all those factors to work out how to move up the City Power Index. But in the end, that's just an index. What really matters is the foreign investment and wealth and life of the people in Jakarta. And I think there are three things that are necessary if we want to encourage economic development, especially the four sectors that I've mentioned. Is better infrastructure, which the infrastructure in Jakarta is already much better than when I came here 8 years ago, but there's a lot more to be done. Things like the light rail system, which only has six stations, is supposed to be 7 lines. We need that as soon as possible. Encouraging the digital ecosystem. It's already very strong. It can be a real enabler for the growth of Jakarta. But the most important thing is the deregulation. And just one final fact. Indonesia scores #1 as the world's most complex market, the most complex place to do business. And that's one of the reasons why people don't come here, or not as many people come here as could. And the job creation laws certainly are the first step in trying to address this point. But I think it can't happen fast enough. There are a lot of regulations here that don't serve any useful purpose, or they contradict other regulations. And so a lot more effort needs to go into simplifying. I think we can skip that. So I hope I've stayed within time and given some food for thought. I'm happy to follow up with any of the participants offline. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you, Julian. So deregulation, one of the key to attract investors and to the light of how the future Jakarta will become, following the terminology in physics, inertia. So Jakarta is still there, although we have possibly we have the new capital city, but Jakarta remains relevant in terms of several sectors, especially tourism, finance, education, and health. That can actually become the firepower of the next Jakarta to become the next global city. Okay, we have now some questions in the list. So I will read it for you. The first question is from Pak Iksan from Jakarta Investment Centre, specifically to Pak James Watkins. The question is, thank you for your inspiring presentation. I would like to ask your opinion on what is Jakarta's biggest asset or biggest strength in facing the new era of not being the capital city, and how should we try to capitalize on that strength? Okay, that is the first question. The second from Pak Java Maukar, Venus University. How can Jakarta learn from London? Okay. And then the third question from Muhammad Kamaluddin, ITS Indonesia. Looking at the UK successful example of Stratford Olympic Complex redevelopment, can we apply the similar policy and principles in Jakarta redevelopment, especially for national government office areas that can be redeveloped and rejuvenated when the central government finished or relocated to the new capital city? Maybe there is the questions. We have so many questions here, but maybe that questions can be addressed first. If we have time, we can go along with others. Okay, please.
I think Mr. James is no longer with us.
Oh, but James is not here now.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so yeah, so we don't have for London, but maybe do we have any from the Londons that can actually share review, or if not, we can actually skip that part.
Well, I'm from. I can answer that question if I may.
Okay, please, Julian.
I mean, I lived in London for a long time before Indonesia. A question about what is Jakarta's greatest strength.
Yeah,
I'd say two things. One is the people. I mean, the reason I came here for 2 years originally, and I've been here for 8, and the people are very friendly, welcoming, and that creates a good basis for encouraging investment, tourism, whatever. And it's just removing the barriers, as I said. And then the other advantage is the size of the Indonesian economy and the fact that it's growing. So Jakarta as a gateway to the rest of Indonesia will become more and more important. So those are two reasons which you can't take away from Jakarta.
Okay, thank you, Pak Julian. So I think there's actually a very good answer. Then coming to Pak Alfian Rahman. This is from your institution, PricewaterhouseCoopers. Considering that a part of Jakarta will be sinking in the future, is it worth it to reform the public transportation ASAP, considering how car-centric Jakarta is? Maybe Pak Julian or maybe Bu Sophia and maybe Pak Aji also can actually answer this in 1 minute each. Pak Baji first. From Babada.
Julian first.
Okay, Pak Julian. Okay,
I
please.
will answer it.
Because this is coming also from PricewaterhouseCoopers, so I think.
I mean, okay, Jakarta does have the problem of the rising water table, but I mean, that is one of the reasons for building the new capital city. Actually, it won't fix it because even if you take the pressure off Jakarta, there will still be more people wanting to come and live in Jakarta and still more development. But I think it's just that there are engineering solutions. Yeah, investment. It doesn't negate the need for investment in public transport, but obviously when we build MRT tunnels, we have to make sure they don't flood. But that seems to have worked so far. So I'm not so worried about it. But I think what we do need is better investment in water supply infrastructure to stop people draining the water out of the land. So there are things that can be done to stop the sinking.
Sure. Then Bu Sophia, Safia, can you
Yeah,
also answer? Okay.
sure. Yeah, I think it's an interesting question to highlight the approach that we need to take for any investment in infrastructure or development to make sure that we're considering climate change risk in how we're designing for infrastructure like the MRT or other public transport or any other piece of infrastructure. I think maybe that's not mandated or business as usual here. So I think there's a lot of opportunity of learning from other contexts to make sure that that is kind of a foundation on how we think about where we design and the technical approaches to design as well.
Thank you, Bu Safia. And then Pak Aji, do you have some words?
Okay,
for this?
I agree with Julian that it's not only Jakarta city that located under the water. For example, the Rotterdam itself is located under the water. So there are engineering solution and then following with the like I mentioned before that we have planning to make a strict regulation to for the water extraction prohibited policy. So we also at the same time create the other solution for the water pipeline work, so we can provide clean water for our residents. So that's how we will deliver the strategy for Jakarta in the future.
Okay, thank you, Pak Haji. So the last from Pak Muhammad Emilio, I think this is also for your closing statement, because this is actually a very general and actually wrapping up questions. How much prepared how Jakarta to become a global city? Yeah, 1 minute each, please. Maybe starting from Pak Haji, because you're the one who plans the future for Jakarta, please. Pak Haji.
Yeah. So I think we need to make a differentiation between developing the Nusantara as a new IKN and also Jakarta. When we talking about developing new national capital in Nusantara, we make it from the blank paper. But Jakarta is already developed and then sprawl location and so sprawl development. So also it takes time to make our plan for Jakarta to become the global city, but we are on progress on it. So hopefully we can implement it the planning for Jakarta as fast as we can. So we can create Jakarta as a more livable. I think the rank is just only the numbers. The most important thing is how we create Jakarta as a city for everyone, as a city for people to work, people to invest, people to have fun in it. So that's the most important thing in my opinion. The rank or whatever the grading for between the city, it's just only the number. The purpose, the main purpose is how we make our city more livable, more playful. So as myself also a citizen of Jakarta City, so I hope that we can have fun in our city. So we have many facilities when we can have fun in our city. That's all, in my opinion.
Thank you, Pak Aji, for your closing statement. Then Bu Safia.
Yeah, I think there's opportunity to build on this momentum of kind of questioning Jakarta's role in Indonesia to create a plan of being prepared for the future. I think there is a need to think about preparedness in the context of embracing uncertainty as well. So I think there's a point that we could think about things that need to be fixed. And I think some of Pak Aji's reflections on ensuring that Jakarta is open for all and being a fun city. I think those things can be fixed in the preparation for the future of Jakarta, but then we need to be open to some of the uncertainties that we've experienced and we know that will be experienced. So I think what is certain is uncertainty. And I think a way to maybe respond to that is starting to take this time to explore those big questions about what the city is for, some of the questions and the responses that Julian made in terms of the economic propositions of Jakarta, and then who the city is for, being able to really include all and think about how we're more deliberate about including all in the city, and thinking about then how we develop and where we develop in some of the spatial plans that Pak Aji has already started to explore and refine.
Thank you, Bu Safia. And then Pak Julian, please.
Just very briefly, I think if we're trying to attract investment in Jakarta, people always in Indonesia talk a lot about, well, what needs to be done to attract investment, things like tax incentives. But I think the emphasis has to be much more on removing the barriers, because there are people who want to come here anyway, and then they get discouraged because it's too difficult. So that's why I refer you back to my last slide about Indonesia being very complicated. If we can just simplify the process, the investment will come.
Thank you, Julian. Very concise and straight to the point. Yeah, we need the money. Okay, then to wrap up, this is a very good and productive session. Thank you for all the panelists. So one of the key ideas and to have the future Jakarta is to have the concept of a city that can able to foster connectivity among citizens, centered on the citizens, and works for them. Yeah, playful, cheerful, and so on and so forth. So in order to actually produce that kind of outcome, we need a collaboration across stakeholders within the quadruple helix ecosystem. Quadruple helix means we have the universities, we have the industries, private sectors, we have also the government and the community. So all in all, this will be entangled to create, Jakarta as the future global city. Okay, thank you for your participation, all the panelists and all the participants of this webinar. Coming back to you, Bu Chika. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fitra, for moderating the panel session. We will send our deepest appreciation once again to all distinguished panelists and speakers for the insightful presentation and discussion. And of course, thank you to all participants for taking your time to be with us in the Jakarta Future Global City Preparedness. Hopefully, today's discussion inspires us all to seize and optimize collaboration in Jakarta's investment opportunities ahead to boost Jakarta in becoming a global city. All right, before we call it a day, ladies and gentlemen, please kindly have your cameras open for a group photo. We will take a screenshot 3 times, starting from the first section. In a count of 3, we will screenshot the screen in sequence. 1, 2, 3. All right, next section, open your camera, please. 1, 2, 3. And the last section, 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow me to share a bit information that our discussion today is a pre-event of the Jakarta Investment Forum 2023. JIF is an annual investment forum initiated by JIC in collaboration with Bank Indonesia to showcase investment opportunities open for collaboration. And we welcome you all to join us in the upcoming JIF exhibition starting. jakarta.go.id, as well as contact one of our team members after this event, or you can scan the barcode shown on screen to register yourself at our event. Once again, thank you to all panelists, guests, and participants for joining us in Jakarta Future Global City Preparedness. Also, a very special thanks to British Embassy Jakarta and Jakarta Investment Forum for conducting this insightful discussion. See you at our next event. Thank you.